Nearly half of voters want a general election by spring 2024, including a third of Tories, this poll finds. I'm going to read into this exclusive from iNews, guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an exclusive article from iNews with the headline that nearly half of voters want a general election by spring 2024, including a third of Tories, this poll shows. Now, as I say, when it comes to polls, so let me just get it straight off the bat to you guys. It's a poll, not the poll of all polls that tells every single one of us that this is the definitive factor of what things. It is just a perception of what a percentage of what people who have conducted in the poll have said. So, like I say, with any polls, I think it's really important to stress this. Take it with a pinch of salt. So, based on this right now, before we look into it, so obviously half of voters want a general election by spring. Straight off the bat, that doesn't feel right to me because we've had we are considering where we were just a few years ago. Never mind the last 13 years, just a few years ago. People have gotten a lot worse off in a very short space of time. Very short space of time, considering the changes of prime ministers and changes of cabinet, and you would have thought that would have made more than half the voters want to have a general election. I think that really surprises me. And a third there of Conservative voters as well. Something tells me what I hear more is that Tory voters are more likely just not to vote rather than actually vote. But neither here nor there. It's hard to read the room unless you really know into the details of this. But we're going to read into this anyway, guys. So let's dive into it. So more than 4 in 10 voters believe Labour will secure a majority when the country goes to the ballot box. Really? There are still scepticism about Labour getting that majority, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we, guys? So, nearly half of the electorate want to see a general election by the spring of next year, including almost a third of those who voted for Tory in 2019, a polling shows. Exclusive polling for I by the BMG Research reveals that 48% of the electorate want Rishi Sunak to call a general election within the next 6 months, rather than wait until the next autumn. And 29% of people who voted Conservative in the last election also want their say on who should form the next government sooner rather than later. Some 28% of voters would prefer to wait longer, beyond the next 6 months, to go to the polls, including 53% of Conservative voters in the last election. Labour will point to the figures as further evidence the need for a general election by May next year, when local and mayoral elections are also held. The party has been planning for a spring election. It is believed the Tories will go sooner than expected if the economic picture begins to improve, and is expected by the middle of the year. But the Conservatives have repeatedly suggested that an election in late October or early November is more likely, as it will give the Prime Minister the most time to reap any benefits of lower inflation and potential economic growth. It coincides with increasing doubts among voters of the Tories' chance of staying in power when the election is eventually held. According to the survey, more than 1,500 British adults between the 11th and 12th of October, 44% of the country believe Labour will secure a majority at the next election, including a third, 30% of Tory voters. Just 17% of the electorate believes the Conservatives are on course for a majority. 17% is very low, which will come as little surprise given the party remains 13 points behind Labour on voting intention. Even fewer, 15%, believing there will be a hung parliament, among them 20% of Tory voters. But I'm in more of the hung parliament phase, to me, because it always happens that as you get closer to a general election, the polls start narrowing, and regardless of what goes on between now and the next general election, that poll is going to narrow. I do apologise for yawning. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I do apologise. The gap will narrow. The gap will eventually narrow. It's going to happen. It's not going to stay like a big gap. It will narrow. The Labour may stay in the lead throughout the whole time between now and the next general election, but things can happen. Things can always change. That's one thing that's for sure. Perhaps the most worrying for Mr Sunak is the sizable belief that among the electorate of the need for change in government. The result shows more than a third, 34%, of those who intended to vote Labour at the next general election gave this as a reason for their decision, including 45% of those who had voted Tory in 2019. More than a quarter, 27%, said they were planning to vote for Sir Keir Starmer because there were no better options, revealing a lack of support for the Labour leader's office to the country. Just 18% said Sir Keir was the best candidate for the job of Prime Minister, while only 16% said Labour was best suited to tackle the challenges facing the country. In a further boost for Labour, polling by Saventa revealed that the party is now neck and neck with the SNP in Scotland, on both with 35%. For the first time this has happened since the independent referendum in 2014. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on the polling in Scotland. I don't think that's fair for me to state on, if I'm honest, guys. But as I said, these are numbers, but they are interesting numbers to say the least. I think, just 17% believe that Conservatives are on course for a majority. I'm surprised actually it's not lower. I think there's some real people out there who generally believe that without a shadow of a doubt the Conservatives are going to win. No matter what. If you're in a bubble and you're not reading outside that bubble, that's probably why you have that belief. It's also, again, as they said, there was about 1,500 British adults which were conducted in this as well. So, but as I said, it is interesting numbers to say the least. But as we get closer to the general election, that's when the election is finally announced, the manifestos come out, and as we run down that wire, that's when the polls really will give some indications, but they're not always right, and they've been proven throughout not history to be wrong. So just because the polls are saying it doesn't mean it's accurate. So we'll have to wait and see on that, to be sure. What do you guys make of these numbers? What do you think of that? Only nearly half of voters want a general election. Do you guys not feel that should be a bit higher? I think it should be a bit higher. I don't think it's an accurate polling, but as I said, it is one poll. But what do you guys honestly think of these? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like, share, and subscribe as always, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.